The slap echoed through the plaza, louder than the bustling crowd, louder than the beating of my heart. Eva's hand stung my face, but the real pain came from the look in her eyes, empty, distant, as if I was nothing more than a stranger to her. "How could you, Eva?" I whispered, the words barely escaping my lips as I staggered back, the burn on my cheek throbbing with every breath. My mind was clouded, and all I could think about was the 10 years we'd spent together, the trust we'd built, the promises we'd made. Gone. All of it, in the span of a heartbeat. She didn't say a word. Not one word of apology. Not one explanation. Instead, she glanced over her shoulder, locking eyes with him, the man who stood just behind her. His presence was a shadow over me, a cruel reminder of everything I had failed to see. I tried to speak again, but the words got caught in my throat. How could she do this? But there he was, the man who had been my friend, the man who'd smiled at me just last week like nothing had changed. I wanted to scream, but it was as if the ground had swallowed me whole. Eva turned her back on me, slipping her hand into his, and they walked away together, as if the last decade of my life had meant nothing. In the midst of the crowd, I stood frozen. Betrayed. Heartbroken. Humiliated. And I knew, in that moment, something had to change. Something had to be done. I couldn't just let it end like this. Not like this. I pulled out my phone, a cold rage settling in my chest. I would make sure they understood that betrayal, especially this kind, came with consequences. There was no turning back now. For years, Eva and I had been inseparable. We met in college, back when we were just two uncertain, ambitious souls trying to figure out who we were. I was the quiet, introspective guy who always had his nose buried in books or behind the lens of a camera. She was the free spirit, the one with dreams bigger than the sky, with eyes that sparkled when she spoke about the future. We were opposites in many ways, yet together, it felt right. It was the kind of connection people talk about, the kind that makes them believe in soulmates. But as much as I wanted to believe in it, deep down, I could never quite shake the feeling that something wasn't right. Maybe I ignored the signs for too long, or maybe I was just too afraid to confront the truth. The truth, which I would later realize, had been staring me in the face all along. It started small. Little things. Eva's late-night phone calls. The long hours she spent texting, always a little too private, a little too guarded. There were moments when she'd look at her phone and smile in a way that didn't reach her eyes, as if she was savoring something that didn't belong to me. But I convinced myself it was nothing, that she was just busy with work or life. I trusted her, perhaps too much. "I'm just tired," she'd say, "after a long day of running errands, I need some space tonight." I never questioned it. I wanted to be the understanding boyfriend, the one who gave her room to breathe, to grow. I thought that's what love was, trust and freedom. But as the months went on, the cracks started to widen. Her smiles became less frequent. Her warmth, once so genuine, grew colder. The long phone calls stretched into hours, and when I asked who she was talking to, she would shrug it off with a smile that never quite reached her eyes. The last straw came 3 weeks ago. I had come home early from a photo shoot, thinking we'd spend the evening together, catch up over a glass of wine, maybe watch a movie. But when I opened the door to our apartment, I saw her standing there, on the phone again, her face flushed with a strange excitement. Her back was to me, but I could hear the sweet, almost flirtatious tone in her voice as she spoke. I knew it wasn't meant for me. It couldn't be. I waited, silent, just a few feet away, my heart sinking with every word I heard. Then, I saw the way her eyes flicked to the corner of the room, as if she was checking to make sure I hadn't walked in. She didn't know I was there. "Can't wait to see you tonight," she said, her voice dropping to a whisper that made my stomach twist. I didn't need to hear more. The betrayal was written in the air between us. The feeling that had been gnawing at me for months was suddenly undeniable. I walked out, my hands trembling, my chest tight with something that felt like rage and heartbreak combined. I didn't confront her that night. I couldn't. I just left. I needed space, just like she'd said, though it wasn't for the same reason. When I came back to the apartment the next day, she was there, sitting on the couch, her face pale, eyes red from crying. "You were right," she said, her voice shaking. "There's someone else." At that moment, I wanted to shout, to demand answers, to make her feel the same pain I was feeling. But I didn't. Instead, I sat there, numb, trying to piece together how everything had gone so wrong. The one person I had trusted more than anyone had shattered that trust in a way that was almost impossible to understand. She told me his name. Daniel. A man I had known. A man who had been my friend for years. "I never meant for it to happen," she said, her eyes searching mine for some kind of forgiveness. But there was none to be found. I was so lonely. And he understood me in ways you didn't anymore. I wanted to scream. How long has this been going on? Was I just a fool, blind to everything around me? The weight of the betrayal hit me harder than I could have anticipated. "He's been there for me when you were too focused on your work, on your photography, on everything else but us," she added, her voice barely above a whisper. I stood up, barely able to breathe through the tightness in my chest. "Don't talk about him like that. Don't make this my fault." She was silent, tears rolling down her cheeks. I saw her face, raw, exposed, but beneath that, something else lingered. Guilt? Or perhaps, a hint of something else that I wasn't ready to confront yet. For the next week, I stayed in a cold silence with her, trying to come to terms with what had happened, with the man I once called my best friend, and the woman who had been my world. Eva wanted to talk about us, but I couldn't face the words or the truth. I started distancing myself, both physically and emotionally. I didn't want to let her in anymore. And yet, in the back of my mind, I knew there was more to the story. The betrayal had only just begun. Looking back now, I can see the warning signs that had always been there. The late-night calls. The strange messages. The sudden distance. They had all pointed to something I didn't want to acknowledge. It had never been just about Daniel. It was about something deeper. Something that Eva had never truly shared with me. As the days dragged on, the distance between us grew, and with it, the quiet storm of my own emotions, hurt, anger, and a quiet resolve that I couldn't quite name yet. But it was there, buried deep beneath the pain, ready to surface when the time came. And when it did, I knew exactly what I would do. It had been 2 weeks since Eva had confessed everything to me. 2 weeks of silence, 2 weeks of pretending nothing was wrong when everything had been ripped apart. She was still in the apartment, but it felt like a foreign place to me, as if I no longer belonged there. I found myself spending more time out of the house, shooting in unfamiliar places, trying to escape the crushing weight of the betrayal. But everywhere I went, the echoes of that night followed me. The betrayal was in the air, suffocating me, taunting me with every passing moment. Eva kept calling, texting, but I never answered. I didn't want to hear her apologies. I didn't want to feel the sting of her guilt again, knowing how much damage had already been done. I had tried to be patient with her, tried to understand, but there was a point where the wounds were too deep to heal with words alone. It was late one evening when I saw him again. Daniel. I was sitting in a dimly lit coffee shop, scrolling through my phone, when I looked up to see him walking in with a woman I didn't recognize. I knew instantly that he had been seeing her for a while, and the thought twisted my gut. I was about to look away, to pretend I hadn't seen him, when he caught my eye. His face softened into a small, almost guilty smile as he walked over to my table. He was wearing that damn leather jacket I had always told him was too flashy for his style. I almost wanted to laugh at the irony. Here he was, standing before me, like he hadn't betrayed me in the worst way possible. "Hey, man," he said, sitting down without waiting for an invitation. His voice was casual, like everything was fine. Like we hadn't just shared years of friendship, only for him to betray me with the one person I trusted most. "Daniel," I replied, my tone flat, the weight of my silence hanging heavy between us. He shifted uncomfortably but tried to hide it behind a forced grin. "You're looking good," he added, glancing at the empty seat across from me. The woman with him, a tall brunette with sharp features, stood awkwardly behind him, her eyes darting between us as if she wasn't sure whether to stay or leave. I nodded without saying anything, but my mind was spinning. I could feel the anger bubbling beneath the surface, threatening to break free. I hadn't seen him in person since everything had come out, since Eva had told me about their affair, the secret rendezvous they had shared, the late-night talks. But here he was, acting as though everything was normal. The woman, noticing the tension in the air, cleared her throat. "Should we go sit somewhere else?" she asked, her voice tentative. "Nah, it's fine," Daniel said quickly, waving her off. "We're old friends. Just catching up." I wanted to snap at him, to yell and ask how he could sit there and pretend nothing had changed, how he could look at me with that stupid grin when I knew exactly what he had done. But instead, I leaned back in my chair, folding my arms across my chest. "What's her name?" I asked, my voice colder than I intended. The words tasted bitter in my mouth. "Her," Daniel said, glancing at the woman beside him. "This is Laura. We've been seeing each other for a few weeks now." He gave a casual shrug, like the whole situation was no big deal. I swallowed hard, my pulse racing. Laura? I didn't even care about her. I didn't care that she was sitting next to him now, smiling like everything was perfectly fine. What burned in my chest was the knowledge that I had trusted this man with everything, my life, my time, my love for Eva, and he had thrown it all away like it didn't matter. "You know," Daniel continued, as if it wasn't the most awkward conversation in the world, "Eva and I, we never really." "Don't," I interrupted him sharply. The name of the woman who had been my world felt like acid on my tongue. "Don't say her name." There was a beat of silence before he nodded, his smile fading just a bit. He leaned back in his chair, studying me carefully, as if trying to read me. "I didn't want to hurt you," Daniel said softly, his voice laced with an uncomfortable sincerity. "You know that, right?" My chest tightened at the absurdity of it. "You didn't want to hurt me?" He had been lying to me, laughing in my face while I was too busy living in my own world to see it. He was the reason Eva had gone down this path. He had encouraged it, had told her I wasn't enough for her, and had whispered things in the dark that I would never know about. I had been a fool, a blind fool, while Daniel played the role of the loyal friend, the one who was there for her when I wasn't. "You're not sorry, Daniel," I said, the words spilling out with a quiet venom I didn't know I had in me. "You're sorry that you got caught." He looked at me, his eyes narrowing slightly. There was a flicker of something in them, something I couldn't quite place. But at that moment, I knew. He wasn't sorry. He wasn't sorry at all. I stood up abruptly, my chair scraping across the floor. "I don't want to hear your excuses," I said, my voice low and controlled. "I know exactly what you've done." Laura, still standing behind him, looked confused, glancing between the two of us. "What's going on?" she asked hesitantly. But I ignored her. I wasn't there for her. I wasn't there for Daniel. I was there for the years I had wasted, the trust one had given to the one person who would betray me without a second thought. I turned to leave, my hand already on the door, when Daniel's voice stopped me. "You can't just walk away from this, man," he called out, his voice tense now. "You need to talk about it. You need closure." I paused, my hand still gripping the door handle. For a second, I almost turned around. Almost. But then I realized, there would never be closure. Not with him. Not with Eva. Without a word, I walked out of the coffee shop, leaving everything behind, everything except the cold, burning determination that was now consuming me. I wasn't going to let them get away with this. Not this time. The day after I left the coffee shop, I couldn't escape the gnawing sense of suffocating tension that had followed me since the moment Eva and Daniel's betrayal had come to light. Everything felt wrong, as if the very air had turned toxic. I was still processing the conversation with Daniel, his smugness lingering in my mind like a bad taste I couldn't shake off. But there was more to it now, something deeper, something darker that I was beginning to realize. Eva had been quiet for days, and for the first time, I wasn't sure if it was out of guilt or out of calculation. I couldn't figure out what she was thinking anymore. Was she regretting what she'd done? Or had she already moved on? I had no idea. But then came the text. "We need to talk. Please." It wasn't the apology I expected. It wasn't a desperate plea for forgiveness. It was cold, almost sterile, like an emotional transaction. And that terrified me more than anything else. I sat there in my apartment, staring at the message for what felt like an eternity, the same thoughts spiraling around in my mind. Should I meet her? Should I just block her, cut her off completely like I had with Daniel? For a brief moment, the idea of blocking her felt right, felt like the easy solution. But I wasn't done yet. Not by a long shot. I agreed to meet her the following evening. The bar we chose was dimly lit, with a soft jazz band playing in the corner. I couldn't decide if the setting was meant to be romantic or just another attempt to seem normal. I arrived early, sitting at a corner table, trying to steady my nerves. The place smelled of whiskey and wood, and the ambient noise of conversation buzzed in the background. When she walked in, she looked different. The Eva I had known for so many years, the woman who had always been so vibrant, seemed almost diminished. Her face was pale, her eyes tired and sunken, but there was a certain guardedness in her posture now. The girl who had once leaned into my touch with warmth was now distant. Every step she took seemed calculated, as though she was walking on eggshells. She saw me, her eyes immediately locking onto mine, and for a split second, I saw something: remorse? Fear? It vanished as quickly as it came, replaced by the same cold, unyielding expression she had worn the last time we spoke. "Hey," she said, her voice flat. She sat down across from me, pulling her jacket tighter around herself, as though it was the only thing keeping her grounded. I didn't respond right away. I didn't know how to. There was so much I wanted to say, so much anger and pain that I could barely hold it together. I could feel it simmering beneath the surface, threatening to burst through. "What do you want, Eva?" I finally managed, my voice low, controlled. She took a deep breath, her fingers nervously tracing the rim of her glass. "I know you hate me," she started, her eyes darting away for a moment. "But I wanted to tell you that I never meant to hurt you. Not like this." I almost scoffed. The irony was almost too much to bear. She never meant to hurt me. What was this? A justification for her actions? Then why did you? I asked, my voice shaking with barely contained fury. "You told me you loved me. You said I was the one for you. And then this happened. How do you even look at yourself after what you've done?" She flinched at my words, but only for a moment. She straightened her back, her face hardening again. "I didn't fall in love with him, not in the way you think," she said, her voice suddenly calm, almost cold. "It wasn't about love. It was. I was lost, okay? And Daniel, he made me feel like I wasn't invisible anymore." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. I wanted to scream at her, to throw everything in her face. But there was a part of me, a part that still cared despite everything, that listened. She was broken. "I thought it was just a phase," she continued, looking down at her hands. "But it wasn't. It became something else. I wasn't just angry with you. I was angry with myself. With everything. And Daniel was there, he just was. I could feel the wound reopening, but this time, there was something different about her confession. She wasn't offering an apology. She wasn't even asking for forgiveness. She was simply explaining, as though she had already made her peace with what she had done. And now what? I asked, my voice tight with a mix of disbelief and confusion. You think we can just pick up where we left off? You think I can just pretend like none of this happened? She shook her head, her eyes brimming with a mix of frustration and guilt. No. I didn't expect that. I wanted you to know that I'm not the person you thought I was. I can't be that person anymore. Her words were a cruel admission of what I had already known. I wasn't sitting across from the woman I had fallen in love with. This wasn't the same person. This was a stranger. Then why are you here? I demanded, my voice rising in frustration. Why even come to me with this? Why even try to talk to me? What do you expect me to say, Eva? Is that all okay? She hesitated, her lips trembling as if she was searching for the right words. I wanted to tell you the truth. To apologize, I guess. And I want to leave him. I don't want to be with Daniel anymore. The statement hung in the air, like a challenge thrown at my feet. The audacity of it. After everything they had done to me, now she was claiming she wanted out. She wanted to abandon him because he wasn't the one. Because I was the one who had been wronged, but now she had had a change of heart. The words stuck in my throat, but instead of speaking, I stood up. I could feel my entire body shaking with rage, but I didn't yell. I didn't throw a tantrum. Instead, I looked at her one last time. No. I'm done, Eva, I said, each word coming out with brutal finality. You've made your choices. I don't need to be a part of them anymore. And with that, I walked away. I didn't look back. It's strange how quickly someone can become a stranger. The night after I walked away from Eva in that bar, something shifted inside of me. I could feel the anger starting to pulse, the betrayal turning into a kind of cold resolve. There was no turning back now. I wasn't going to let them, Eva and Daniel, walk away from this unscathed. They had taken so much from me, and I wasn't about to let them have it all without consequences. The thing about revenge is that it's not just about hurting someone back. It's about finding justice in a world that's suddenly upside down. It's about making them feel the weight of their actions in a way that makes them question everything. That's what I wanted. And more than anything, I wanted them to regret ever thinking they could get away with it. I'd been planning for days, piecing together a way to make it all come full circle. It wasn't about vengeance in the traditional sense, where you simply hurt someone and move on. No. This had to hit them where it hurt the most, where it would matter. They needed to understand what they had stolen from me, how much of me they had taken without even realizing it. It started with Daniel. I knew where he'd be on Thursday night, the same bar we used to go to together, the place where we'd shared so many beers, so many laughs, pretending like we were invincible. The place he'd started taking Eva when they'd first begun their affair. There was no subtlety in the way he treated me anymore, no pretending we were still friends. And the worst part? He didn't care. He still didn't care. I could hear his voice from across the room as I entered. He was laughing loudly, probably making fun of me to anyone who would listen, but I wasn't there to confront him directly. I wasn't there to get into a fistfight over what had already been done. That would have been too easy, too short-lived. No, my plan was more intricate than that. I waited for an hour, watching from the shadows, waiting for him to settle into his usual routine. At one point, I saw him pull out his phone and start texting someone, likely Eva. I knew what I had to do next. It wasn't about humiliating him right there in front of everyone. It was about ruining him from the inside out. I pulled my phone from my pocket, opening an encrypted messaging app one had set up a week before. It was time to let the games begin. The first part of the plan was simple, I'd done my research. Daniel was a photographer, much like me, but he didn't have the same reputation. I knew how much he craved validation, how much he needed to be seen as successful in a world where he constantly compared himself to me. So, I created a fake account on a high-profile social media platform, one that was bound to catch his attention. The profile was carefully curated, made to look like the kind of person who could give him the recognition he so desperately sought. I made sure to follow all the right influencers, photographers, and magazine editors. It wasn't hard to get his attention after that. He had always been so desperate for approval. I messaged him, pretending to be interested in collaborating on a major project. The idea was to lure him into a conversation, to make him feel like he was about to get something big. I kept my tone cool, professional, just a touch flirty to pique his interest. After a few back-and-forth exchanges, he bit. He wanted to meet. The next day, we set the meeting at a chic cafe in the heart of the city. I knew he wouldn't miss the opportunity. He was too hungry for the chance to prove that he could make it big, that he could become a name in the industry. I could already see the glimmer of pride in his eyes as he typed back, confirming the time and place. But the thing was, he wouldn't show up alone. The night of the meeting, I arrived early, scanning the cafe for Daniel. But what I didn't expect was Eva. She was there, sitting in the corner booth, her eyes scanning the room nervously as if she knew something was off but couldn't figure out exactly what. I watched her for a while, her discomfort growing with each passing minute, until Daniel finally walked in. I knew this was the moment. Eva's eyes flickered nervously when she saw him approach. The scene unfolded exactly as I had planned. As Daniel sat down across from Eva, I could see him eagerly trying to sell himself, trying to impress her, trying to get her attention. She didn't seem to notice. She was too busy texting on her phone. I couldn't help but smile. This was where it got interesting. I wasn't going to reveal myself yet. No, I had something much more fitting in mind. I watched them, listening to their conversation, the awkwardness thick in the air. Daniel was talking about this big photography project he had lined up, but Eva's responses were half-hearted, distracted. She seemed uncomfortable, her eyes darting to her phone every few seconds. This wasn't the reunion he had envisioned. I picked up my phone and sent a message, pretending to be from someone who knew Eva, someone who had been following her for a while. The message was simple but damning: "Tell Daniel you were with him last night. You know, when you had your business dinner and you told him you were just friends. Don't pretend like I didn't see you both leave the bar together." I watched as Eva read the message, her face going pale. Her eyes flicked nervously between her phone and Daniel, who was still talking, oblivious. She held her phone tightly, the message lingering in her hands, her face now flushed with guilt and panic. "Eva?" Daniel asked, his voice suddenly tinged with suspicion. "What's wrong?" She looked at him, her lips trembling. I could see the regret in her eyes, but it wasn't for him. It was for me. And for herself. She wasn't the woman who'd had it all together anymore. She was a liar, and now the truth was coming out. "Daniel," she said quietly, her voice shaking. I think we should stop. All of this. It was a mistake." I watched, barely able to contain my satisfaction. Eva's face was twisted in regret as she told him everything, how she had used him, how she had lied to him, and how much she regretted ever getting involved with him. But the thing that shocked both of them the most wasn't just the confession. It was when I walked over to their table, calmly sitting down across from them. Daniel's face drained of color when he saw me, and Eva's eyes widened in realization. "You two have been so damn careful with your lies," I said, my voice cold, "but you forgot one thing. I'm not as blind as you think I am." I pulled out my phone, showing them the fake profile I had created, the messages I had sent, and the screenshots of their conversations. Daniel's face fell, and Eva looked like she wanted to crawl into a hole and disappear. But I didn't stop there. "You think you've taken everything from me?" I said, my voice growing sharper. You think you can just move on like nothing happened? You can't. You owe me. And you're going to pay for it. As the scene unfolded, I felt a strange sense of calm wash over me. I had done it. I had made them feel the weight of what they had done. And just before I left, I turned to Eva, my voice soft but chilling. You may think you've made things right, but the truth is, you've broken something inside me. I don't know if I'll ever be able to forgive you. With that, I stood up and walked away, leaving them to deal with the mess they had created together. The days following the confrontation were a strange mix of relief and emptiness. I had expected a flood of satisfaction, the kind of release you get when you've finally taken control of a situation that's been out of your hands for too long. But instead, there was just silence. A quiet stillness that stretched into the corners of my life, as if the universe was waiting for something else. Something more. Eva tried to reach out again, of course. She texted. She called. But I never answered. I couldn't. The truth was, I didn't want her back. I didn't want her to apologize anymore. That part of me, the part that longed to forgive, to pretend like everything could go back to normal, had died the moment she walked away with Daniel. The moment she slapped me in public for someone else. I had won. I had executed the plan perfectly, made them both feel the sting of betrayal in ways they would never forget. But the aftermath. The aftermath was different than I had expected. It wasn't about vengeance anymore. It was about moving on. And I realized, with a bitter twist in my chest, that I didn't even know who I was anymore without her. Without that chapter of my life. I threw myself back into my work, photography, my passion. The camera was my only real refuge, the lens the only thing that kept me from spiraling back into the mess I had left behind. But every so often, when I was alone, I'd feel it again. That emptiness. That gnawing feeling that something had changed inside me in ways I couldn't yet understand. And then came the call. It was late, past midnight, when I saw the name flash on my phone. A number I didn't recognize. Hello. I answered, my voice hoarse from exhaustion. Is this Aiden? A smooth voice asked from the other end. I didn't recognize the voice, but there was something in the tone that felt deliberate. It was calm, calculated. Someone who wasn't asking permission, but demanding attention. Yes, who's this? I replied, the tension building in my chest as I braced myself for something unexpected. I think we need to talk, the voice continued, with just enough edge to suggest that whatever came next wasn't going to be as simple as a conversation. Who are you? I asked again, more forcefully this time. The line was silent for a moment, before the voice spoke again, but this time with a chilling finality. You don't know me yet. But I know you. And I know exactly what you did to Daniel and Eva. My pulse quickened. I had expected the aftermath of my revenge to be over, to leave me to pick up the pieces and move on. But this was something new. Something unseen. I think you'll find, the voice continued, that things don't end when you think they do. There's always more, Aiden. Always. The line went dead before I could respond. A long beat of silence stretched across the room, and for the first time in weeks, I felt a chill crawl up my spine. I had expected closure after everything. I had thought that by exposing Eva and Daniel for what they were, by getting the justice I'd so desperately craved, I could finally walk away. But now, with this cryptic call hanging over me, I was left with one question: what the hell was this? I didn't know who this person was, or how they knew so much about what I'd done, but the message was clear. They were watching. They had been watching from the shadows the entire time. And they weren't going to let me walk away so easily. The next few days were a blur. I couldn't shake the feeling of eyes on me. Someone was waiting for me to slip, to reveal something I didn't even know I had. I could feel it, like a weight on my chest that wouldn't go away. Every phone call, every message, every encounter with people I once trusted felt like it was under surveillance. But no one came forward. No one admitted to knowing anything more. And then, just when I thought I could finally breathe again, I received another message. This time, it was simple, a link to a website, with no explanation, no context. I hesitated before clicking it, my stomach twisting in anticipation. The web page opened, revealing a grainy, black and white video. My breath caught in my throat as I saw the footage. It was a surveillance video of me. The video showed me leaving my apartment that night after confronting Eva and Daniel. But there was something else in the video. A figure in the background. A shadowy outline that didn't belong. I froze. The figure was watching me. Follow me. They knew where I had been. What I had done. I wasn't just being watched, I was being hunted. For the first time in a long while, I felt truly exposed. The revenge I had so carefully executed had brought more than just closure. It had attracted the attention of someone, or something, that I couldn't yet comprehend. And now, I had no choice but to confront it. But that was the thing about revenge, you never truly know who's behind the curtain. You never know when the consequences will come back, in ways you never expected. My past, my actions, everything I had done, was suddenly tangled in a web that I couldn't see, and I was no longer sure I could escape it. Whoever had made that call, whoever had sent me that video, was only the beginning. There was much more to this story, and I had a sinking feeling that the truth was darker than I could have ever imagined. And it wasn't just about Eva and Daniel anymore. It was about something far deeper. Something I wasn't ready to face. As I sat there, staring at the screen, I knew one thing for sure, this wasn't over. Far from it.